boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this, set to go down early next month. On the undercard of Matchroom's Next Gen show, main event, Dolan versus Bellotti. On the undercard of that, we're going to be seeing a battle of the unbeatens between Shannon Ryan and Emma Dolan. In the women's super flyweight division for what are the British and Commonwealth super flyweight titles. What is a stiff test for Matchroom's unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's super flyweight division. Stiff test for Shannon Ryan as Emma Dolan, she's very tall for this weight, long and limber, generous physical dimensions, whereas Shannon Ryan, she's a bit smaller, more compact. Shannon has to try to use that to her advantage, not dissimilar from what we saw with Tina Ruprecht this weekend.
How does she do it?
Shannon Ryan sports a professional record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet. Whereas Emma Dolan, similar record, 6 wins, no losses, no draws with at least one recorded knockout. Emma, who was last in action late last year in October opposite the ring, an unbeaten up-and-comer like herself in Nicola Hopewell, who I'm very high on and I've talked about once or twice here on the channel. Emma Dolan was able to win a unanimous decision over 10 rounds against then unbeaten Nicola Hopewell. She beat one unbeaten up-and-comer in her last fight. Can she beat another? Emma fought once in 2022 and 2 times in 2023. Her most recent bout was in October, thus she's seen action in the last 12 months and has no ring rust or cobwebs that she needs to shake off. She's been 10 rounds at least 3 times in her young professional boxing career.
That's good.
Whereas Shannon's never fought in a 10-rounder before. She's fought for 8 rounds 2 times, but she's never fought for 10 rounds. Having debuted as a professional in March of 2022, she fought 4 times in 2022, 2 times in 2023. When she started out, when she debuted as a professional, she debuted under the Boxer banner, then eventually migrated over to Matchroom, and she's managed by 258 Management, Anthony Joshua's management company.
The fight.
How does Shannon win it? What does she have to do? How does Emma win it? What does she have to do? Well, Emma Dolan, as stated, is very tall for the weight. She's a very long and limber fighter with generous physical dimensions. And Shannon, she's shorter, more compact. She has to try to use that to her advantage.
How does she do it?
Like any statuesque fighter at a given weight, Emma Dolan has good ring coverage mid-range to outside, but mid-range to inside, on the inside, she's vulnerable because the shorter fighter with the shorter arms can string together combinations much faster than the taller, longer fighter, since they don't need as much room to work and as much room to drive their punches. The taller fighter is vulnerable on the inside.
So Shannon's got to get inside.
To get inside, Shannon Ryan, being the shorter fighter with the lower center of gravity, she's got to use that to her advantage to either slip the straight punches or bob and weave under them, bob and weave under those hooks to get close to Emma and string together 2 and 3 punch combinations on the inside, where Emma is vulnerable, where Emma can be caught. We saw that several times in the Nicola Hopewell fight back in October.
Shannon's standout qualities is that she's fast. She's fast on her feet with fast hands, and she's athletic with very good range of motion.
She's got to move ahead. She's got to move a torso. She's got to slip the jab, slip the straight punches from the outside coming in, and/or bob and weave under the sweeping hooks, as Emma Dolan is sure to fire them. The assignment for Shannon Ryan is getting close to Emma Dolan, where she can fluster her with combinations mid-range to inside. That's the assignment for Shannon. The assignment for Emma.
Shannon has to get close to Emma, whereas Emma has to keep Shannon at arm's length. Keep Shannon in front of her where she can see her. She can't afford to let her get close.
Emma has to try and manage the distance. Keep the fight mid-range to outside. Try and keep Shannon at arm's length. And that's all about distance and spacing. Taking that half step back when you see the other fighters trying to advance so you have room to work and room to throw.
Devin Haney does it all the time.
Emma's got to try to do that. I'm not really sure if she can at only 6-0. There's more work needs doing, and she needs more experience, more rounds in the bank to develop more poise and more patience, knowing what to throw and when to throw it. I feel like the centerpiece of Emma Dolan's strategy really should be the jab.
Might seem like a generic bit of advice, but the jab, well-timed one, that can stop a lot of things from happening before they start.
At first, glance.
Yes.
Emma has to manage the distance while Shannon has to close it.
Yes.
That's the assignment, and it's easier said than done. All things are, but that's the assignment.
It's what they have to do.
It's a very good fight between unbeaten up-and-comers with contrasting styles, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. Men's middleweight news, the WBC's middleweight interim champion Carlos Adamez is none too pleased as he says, "I don't know what to think. I thought that by being in the same company as other middleweights, I would be able to face them. If the fighters from my own company, PBC, don't want to fight me, imagine fighters from other companies. I'm ready for anyone."
Carlos Adamez migrated over to the PBC after he lost the Patrick Teixeira fight on the top-ranked side of things, and Top Rank cut him.
He used to be a top-ranked fighter. He used to be, but after he lost that fight, I think they cut him loose and let him go, and he washed up on the shores of PBC Island. It would be unfair to say that it's been a fruitless endeavor since he arrived there, because he did manage to become WBC interim middleweight champion, and that's worth something.
Yeah.
That lines him up for a fight with Jermall Charlo. The problem is the WBC themselves have not given an indefinite time frame as to when Jermall has to satisfy his mandatory, has to fight Carlos Adamez, which is a bit unfair when you think about it, since Jermall just fought. Jermall literally just fought not but a few months ago in the men's super middleweight division. So if he's back and he's fighting and he's okay to fight, then how is it okay to leave Carlos Adamez in limbo?
He's been interim champion for a little over a year now.
Carlos Adamez sports a professional record of 23 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 18 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 24 professional bouts, and having last seen action in June of last year opposite the ring, Julian Williams, in what was just a keep busy fight, really, just a maintenance fight. It's the only fight that he had that year, and the only fight that he had before that was the Juan Macias Montiel fight in 2022. He's averaging 1 fight a year in the last 2 years. He really hasn't been that active. So how are you supposed to build momentum and build a buzz and get people talking about you and get popular so you can start making real money when you're only fighting once a year?
He's got 1 or 2 common opponents with Jermall Charlo. He fought Sergey Derevyanchenko in 2021, Juan Macias Montiel in 2022, and Julian Williams in 2023.
These are all common opponents between Carlos and Jermall Charlo, but from the sound of Carlos, it doesn't look like that Jermall Charlo fight is going to happen, and I don't expect it to. Jermall Charlo, up until very recently, was out for something like 2.5 years, and the WBC title, the full one, it wasn't in circulation. He came back recently, but it was up there at super middleweight opposite the ring Jose Benavidez.
I don't get the sense he's moving back down.
And I don't get the sense that he's all that pressed about fighting Carlos Adamez. It's a good fight for the hardcores, but it's not a big money fight. That's a high-risk, low-reward fight for Jermall Charlo. It's just another example of how Al Heyman is bad for boxing and how his PBC is stifling today's middleweight division that badly needs a reset.
Michael, why couldn't you have gotten a stay busy fight in your own hometown? You stood out the entire 2023. Would that have taken you out the rankings, ruined your status? Why not stay busy?
Well, I'm going to throw PBC straight under the bus here because, they locked me in the contract. They said, the Garcia-Lara fight and you're going to be on the undercard and, you can't fight anywhere else. And then, that fight didn't end up happening, so I couldn't be on the card. They basically said wherever Lara Garcia back then was going to happen was where I was going to be on the card, and we were
so
just
you just had an open-ended contract with no date, no venue?
Correct. They just said we're waiting for the official date, and it just kept getting pushed from June to July to August to, and it was always next month. I promise you. 4 or 5 weeks.
Tell me they at least gave you step-aside money.
This it gets even better. I haven't received anything.
Lord have mercy. Thank you, Al Heyman.
You see what Michael Zarafa's going through? He was installed by the WBA as the mandatory challenger to the WBA title that Erislandy Lara now holds. And the PBC convinced him to stand down. They convinced him to step aside and let Danny get the shot, and they didn't even pay Michael for it.
So you're holding up the mandatory via the WBA, you're holding up the mandatory via the WBC.
You're holding up the necessary process to keep titles in circulation, keep fighters fighting, keep fighters active. You're holding up that process based on your own limitations stipulations as an outfit, and I told you this was gonna happen. For a long time, I told you.
The Haymanites got mad at me for pointing it out. They're still mad.
Not as mad as Carlos Adamez, though. Carlos Adamez has been belly aching just like this for months, except now he's naming the PBC by name, holding them accountable, more or less, holding them responsible, that here you have a fighter that's on the same side of the street as Charlo, but he can't get a fight with him, dispelling that narrative that was once propagated by Errol Spence Jr.
What narrative?
That Terrence Crawford, who was with Top Rank in those days, was on the quote-unquote wrong side of the street. Errol Spence Jr. started all of that, and his fans ate it up. That was their excuse for Errol not to fight him. That's still their excuse as to why the fight took so long to make, when it's all bullshit. Two guys on a different side of the street, two guys on the same side of the street. When both fighters want to fight, they're gonna fight. But when one of them doesn't...
Stephan didn't use that excuse. Stephan Fulton, he didn't say that he knew he was on the wrong side of the street. Stephan is with the PBC, and he knew he is with Top Rank, but the fight still happened.
Tyson Fury was with Top Rank ahead of the second Deontay Wilder fight. Deontay Wilder, he was with the PBC, but the second fight and the third fight, those fights still happened. So was it really that Terrence was on the wrong side of the street, or was Errol just using that as an excuse not to fight him?
Ian Garcia was on another side of the street. He was with Golden Boy, but that didn't stop the PBC from making a fight with him, making a fight between him and Gervonta Davis.
Getting confused here.
Simple. The sides of the street argument was always a smokescreen, because it's really not about sides of the street. You can have two guys on the same side of the street, like Carlos Adamez and Charlo, and that doesn't guarantee a fight will happen.
Because it's not about sides of the street. It's about fighters wanting to fight, fighters that are going to fight.
It's not about sides of the street.
Carlos and Jamal are on the same side of the street, but if Jamal doesn't want to fight him, if he has other plans, there's nothing that Carlos can do about it, and they're on the same side of the street.
Carlos has to get off the island.
I'm not going to say that going to the PBC was a bad idea overall, that it was all bad. They managed to get you WBC interim status, but now that you've got it,
now what?
you're stuck.
Fuck.
You're fucked.
Fuck.
You're in limbo. You don't have access to Jamal. You don't have access to Lara.
And the other two titles at the weight, they're over there at Top Rank.
It's time to go. This whole thing with Michael Zarafa's title shot being held up, Carlos Adamez's title shot being held up, it all goes back to the PBC, and now it seems that Brandon Figueroa's title shot is held up. What was supposed to be Brandon Figueroa's title shot, he was supposed to be challenging Ray Vargas for the WBC title at 126 pounds, and it seems that the Saudis have other plans for Ray, as the Joshua versus Ngannou card, the card in its entirety, was recently unveiled, and Ray Vargas versus Queensberry Promotions' own Nick Ball is on the undercard. A great fight.
Don't lose focus.
What happened to Vargas versus Figueroa? Brandon Figueroa, they were talking about making that fight for him last year. That's what the story was. Now the story is that the shot's not going to Figueroa, it's going to Nick Ball, a Queensberry fighter. And I'd wager that, well, for Ray Vargas, there's more money for Ray in Saudi fighting Nick than there is for him here in America fighting Figueroa. The PBC's limited resources, limited fight dates, scarcity of finances. Ray Vargas hasn't fought since he lost to O'Shaquie Foster up there at 130 pounds for what was the vacant WBC title. See, what Ray did was he went up to 126, he won the title there from Mark Magsayo, then he decided to move up again to 130 to see if he could win the WBC title at 130. He didn't, he lost, but he's still champion at 126.
Not for long.
What all of this accents is what I've been telling you. With Fox deciding not to renew with the PBC in 2022, Showtime deciding not to renew with the PBC in 2023, they're not operating at the same level that they were before. They don't have as many resources, but they do have a lot of fighters to accommodate. And because they're with Amazon now, that's only giving them 12 to 14 fight dates, and that deal doesn't kick off until March. Well, they can't accommodate everybody. They don't have the resources to do it. So like I told you, fighters are going to start to float away. And it would seem Ray Vargas has effectively floated away, because if he goes to Saudi, while he might make money over there, he's going to lose that belt.
They don't have as many resources. It's hard to accommodate this many fighters. That's why Carlos Adamez's title shot is in limbo. That's why Michael Zarafa's title shot is in limbo. And now, Brandon Figueroa's.
I talked about this. I talked about the potentiality of Nick Ball cornering a fight with either Ray Vargas or Brandon Figueroa, whoever wins their fight, on the premise that there was going to be one. As it stands, the Saudis have decided to fast-track him to the WBC title, and it's a fight that I believe he can win because Ray Vargas, he's coming off a loss. He's coming off a loss at 130. Now he's got to drop back down to 126. He hasn't seen action since February of last year, and he won't be returning to action until March of this one, which means the night of the fight, not only will he be dropping down in weight back to 126, but he will have been out for over a year.
Ray Vargas sports a professional record of 36 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 22 knockouts. To Nick Ball, who sports a professional record of 19 wins with no losses, no draws, 11 knockouts.
So yeah, on paper, Ray's got a lot more fights than Nick Ball does. On paper, he's the more experienced fighter, the more accomplished fighter, but there is more to boxing than what you see on paper. The last couple of years, Ray Vargas hasn't been that active. Ever since he jumped into bed with the PBC, he's been averaging 1 fight a year for the last 3 years. You know, he sat out all of 2020, only fought once in late 2021, then again once in 2022, then once again in 2023. Even though he's got a lot more rounds in the bank and more experience than Nick Ball, he's not that active. He hasn't been.
What does that mean?
That means getting down to 126, having last fought at 130, that's going to be a trial. That could be difficult for Ray. And the night of the fight, his timing might be a little bit off, his reflexes, because he will not have seen action in over a year's time. Ray's fought some good fighters in the past, he has. Crazy A, Azat Havanesian, Tomoko Kimita, Mark Magsayo.
Ronnie Rios years ago.
But inactivity is inactivity. Ray Vargas is best described as a long and limber fighter for featherweight and a cerebral fighter. He's not an artillery guy. He's not a physical fighter, but Nick Ball, he is. And Nick Ball has been a lot busier the last 2 years than Ray Vargas. Nick Ball fought 3 times in 2022, 2 times in 2023, late last year opposite the ring former champion Isaac Dogbay, who he manhandled. That means the night of the fight in March, he'll be sharp. Sharper than Ray Vargas.
A physical fighter, a pressure fighter that's gonna push you physically. That's the worst kind of fighter to fight off a long layoff.
But that's the fighter that Ray Vargas is going to be fighting now that Nick Ball has jumped ahead of Brandon Figueroa in the queue. He's got his work cut out for him.
But the Saudis are making it worth his while, more than Al Heyman was. And it just is what it is.